I worked at a pet store that sold extinct animals. One thing I love about being a reptile owner is getting to own all sorts of exotic and bizarre lizards, snakes, and so on from across the globe. I bought my first one back in high school, female bearded dragon that I named Sue, loosely after the famous T-Rex on display at the Chicago Film Museum. Ever since it had been my passion to own reptiles and amphibians, I've been collecting different species from various stores and suppliers for years now. Though not to gloat, I myself own a whole personnel lingerie, 10 species of snakes, 15 species of lizards, 5 freshwater turtles, 20 species of tropical frogs, 14 species of salamanders and newts, and a sulcata taurus. I had worked at several pet stores in my time owning reptiles, many of which sold threatened or even endangered species of reptiles, amphibians, mammals, and birds. Some of the species I saw were so rare at times I questioned if it was legal to sell them in the first place. However, the most recent store, the one I previously worked at, sells species that, had I not gotten the opportunity to see with my own eyes, I would have never believed. The information I'm about to disclose here may seem like a wild fantasy, but damn it, people need to know about what I saw. It began about 5 months ago, when I had just finished relocating. It was quite a hassle to move all my animals to my new apartment, regardless of having several friends help out with the move. Nonetheless, after dealing with all of that, I started looking for a new job, and one of the first results I came across was an exotic pet store. I knew right away that was my go-to. Within the course of a week, I had applied for a job position and was able to get the position I wanted, working in the reptile department. On the first day, I walked into the store and was met with what was apparently equivalent to a miniature zoo. Up front, there was a large cage with fruit bats hanging from a perch in it. Next to the cage was a rope platform and a small anteater hanging from the ropes. In addition to being surprised, I was immediately impressed by the collection the store had to offer. They sure are something, I turned to see a casually dressed man standing to the left. It didn't take me long to realize the store manager. "You're the new guy," he asked. "Yeah, that would be me," I replied. "My name's Josh. I was the one who applied for the reptile section." "I see. Y'all are in for a lot of cheap jobs. Name's Keith, by the way." After this introduction, I noticed Keith carrying what appeared to be a rock in his right arm. On further inspection, I realized it was a fossil, one of two trilobites side by side. "Paradoxidized Davidus, right?" I asked. "I see you know your stuff," he replied. You see, in addition to my love for reptiles, another interest I had a long time is paleontology. When I was young, dinosaurs and other extinct animals had always caught my attention, and I even started a small fossil collection, one I still have at home to this day. Now it wasn't grand as what I have with my animals. Regardless, I was fascinated. Keith showed me a closer look at the trilobite fossil, letting me see how well preserved they were. "Interesting to think these kind of animals were back then," Keith said. "In fact, 99.9% of everything that exists on this planet is extinct. And we only occupy a tiny sliver of all that history." It looked like Keith was into paleontology and fossils, much like me. My real interest, though, was for the reptiles they had. "About the reptile section that you have." "Oh, wait. About the reptile section that you have here. Can you show me where it is?" I asked Keith. "Sure thing. Right this way." On entering the reptile department, I was amazed by what they had. Legit venomous snakes, vipers, cobras, hognoses, and even an inland taipan, one of the deadliest species known. The section also featured poison dart frogs in South America. That, while cute, contained enough poison to kill 10 humans. The highlight were 2 large tanks, one with white alligator and the other with 2 dwarf caimans. "You sure seem happy," Keith said. "Think you do quite nicely here. As for me, I gotta head out." "Alright," I replied. "Anything else that I should know about?" Yeah, be careful out there. Keith said. Afterwards, Keith left. I wonder what he meant by that. Regardless, I went about the day doing my job. Later in the evenings, towards the end of my shift, I decided to see what other kind of animals were around that the store had to offer. Many animals you wouldn't expect to be kept as pets, like kangaroos and small monkeys, were put on display. There was an array of interesting birds as well, from typical macaws and cockatoos, and even toucans. The fish department had all sorts of tropical fish, one of which was an electric eel, which, believe it or not, is kept by some people in private collections and handled with specialized gear. However, past the fish section, at the back of the store, there was an elevator door. First thought was that it probably led to a storage room, but then to lift the doors read a sign: Historic Department, authorized personnel only. Historic Department. I spent a few minutes contemplating what it meant by Historic Department. I wasn't sure if I was myself was ready to go down, but I didn't want to put my finger on what it could be. I decided I may as well go find out and see for myself. I got into the elevator and selected the lower level. The ride down took several minutes, despite the destination being the only other floor in the building. When the doors finally opened, I walked out to see a colorful array of different terrariums. From a distance, I wasn't sure what kind of animals were inside, but as I went to take a closer look, that's when things started to get weird. On the first terrarium, I peeked at inside was a bizarre-looking lizard. Its body resembled some sort of anole or gecko. The only difference, there were long, feather-like quills coming out from its back. Then I realized what it was. Holy shit! The animal inside was a prehistoric reptile known as a Longisquama reptile from Triassic period. The hell was a reptile that's been extinct for 235 million years, doing an exotic pet store. More importantly, how? Apparently that wasn't all. Another term containing the Dilophosaurus, a Permian amphibian with a boomerang-shaped head. Several reptiles and amphibians supposedly extinct for millions of years were all being contained beneath the pet store. I attempted to rationalize what had been seen, but no matter what I came up with, nothing could properly explain what I was seeing. Without a doubt, there were living, breathing, or animals that haven't been seen in eons. My one question, though, is how? Where did they all come from, and how did the store receive them? Wanting to find out, I decided to take a look around the floor, which was seemingly larger than the actual shop on top. The size of the large hardware store. First section, I decided to explore was the aquarium section. Instantly, I recognized several organisms. One large tank containing Anoplocaris, a perennial shrimp-like pod from the Cambrian, that was about 3 feet long and the earliest known apex carnivores. I watched it swam gracefully around its tank with the round insectoid eyes. Some of the other tanks include some predator jawed fishes as well as some of the earliest species of sharks known to exist. The largest tank in the section was the size of something you'd see in a marine park, though in it swam a medium-sized fish adorned with armored plating. Well, first something of that size, then something massive bolted right out from underneath it like a freight train snapping up in its jaws. Shock, of which made me jump back. I soon realized that the fish was just food. The real animal being obtained was a massive Stephanoian fish, Dunkleosteus. Whoever thinks that keeping a 4-ton predatory Devonian fish as a pet is a good idea, I feel genuine concern for. More importantly, in addition, how all these seemingly extinct animals got here, I began to wonder who they were being sold to. Soon after, I wandered in a section called the title Avians like birds. As well in the section, the first thing I noticed was a grayish-looking bird-like animal with black wingtips. Only had a long tail, fingers underneath its wings, and teeth. Instantly, I recognized it as the primitive avian Archaeopteryx. Several other primitive Mesozoic birds are also showcased in the section. When observed, it's easy to see how modern birds themselves are linked to dinosaurs. Past that section, there was a room with a label unprocessed assets. Not sure what that meant. I walked into the room and saw not living animals but fossils, much like one Keith had earlier. What was the point of all these? What's a collection of fossils doing in an area living with living, breathing, prehistoric animals? It made no sense. I knew you were a cutest boy, but this is a bit much, no. I turned to see Keith standing in the doorway of the fossil room. Keith! I replied. What the hell is this? Where did all these animals come from? Who are you selling them to? Keith just stood there. His perplexed expression slowly turned to a smile. Judge, my boy. All around you is a product of some of the most brilliant minds and advanced science y'all have ever seen. Keith then grabbed the fossil of a hawk-sized dragonfly, presumably a Mechanora. Come on. Gonna show you how it was all made. Keith then led me back to the avian section across the hall to a room titled Processing. In the room, there was a large kiln-like device, and it's surrounded by 4 Tesla coils. This is it, boy. This here's sort of room where it all happens. Where what happens? As Keith just stood there and smiled for a second. You see, my business has always been selling exotic animals from different places. I'd always be supplied with just about every animal from the top floor. But new laws and regulations started coming in. I was able to supply myself the kind of animals I usually saw as often as I used to. But then that's when I got my hands on this thing. Psycho, what does that thing do? I hesitantly asked. Well, I'm gonna show you. He then walked over to the machine with the fossil in his arm, opened the hatch gently. He placed the fossil inside the machine. Step back a bit, boy. This'll be a bit as it is, Keith said. Keith then closed the hatch and guided me over to the control panel with several buttons and a switch. He looked me over an unsettling smirk on his face. Time to fire up. Keith then pressed a large gray button, powering up the Tesla coils, and I could hear electricity powering on. Its machine in the middle began to rev up. The sounds of the machine began to grow louder as it was powering on. At the peak of the machine's full power, Keith then pulled the lever down, resulting in an ear-piercing shock. The machine completely powered down, and for a minute everything was silent. Then out of nowhere, a loud buzzing noise started coming from the machine. Keith seemed to be pleased with this. There you have it, Judge. Out of the machine came a living Mechanora that Keith had held in by the abdomen. I tried desperately to wrap my head around what I just witnessed, but what? How is this even possible? Keith replied, Advanced science, that's how. Had some interesting connections on its fancy tech. He explained while I was putting the dragonfly into a spare cage inside the machine. That's not all, though. Tons of folks on the dark web want to pay big money for these animals. More so than anything I've ever sold before them. Listening to him say all this, part of felt that something about doing this all seemed very risky and wrong. So you just sell these animals no human has ever seen live and just expect people who buy them to stay quiet about this? Keith chuckled. Pretty bad assuming I just sell them to ordinary rich folk. I can only assume what he meant by that. Rory was silent too, and for what purpose seemed like a terrifying thought. And what about me? How do you expect me to go about knowing about what? Keith stopped me suddenly. The hell says you're walking out of here? His response had taken me by surprise. What do you mean? Keith started to smile again. You actually thought I was gonna let you walk out if you didn't know about all this. Can't have you telling the wrong people about my business. My heart started to race. What the hell are you talking about? I shouted. I knew immediately I was in danger. Before I could run, though, Keith grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and pushed a cloth against my nose. I tried to struggle free, but I began to feel drowsy. Nah, shit, Keith said. I really did see some potential in you, boy. But you can't have an omelet without cracking a few eggs, I suppose. As I lost consciousness, I lost my strength. Soon I was out completely. When I woke up, I was slowly able to gain consciousness. Once I was fully conscious, though, I had noticed my hands and feet were tied up, and I was on my knees at the deep, rocky pit with a presumably deeper pool. Before I could do anything, though, a hand touched my shoulder. It was Keith. Easy now, Josh. Not much you can do at this point. I looked at Keith, angry and terrified. Why the fuck are you doing this? He asked. Keith replied, all is down here. Nobody's safe for yours truly. We're supposed to know that. You think I just let no employees walk around here? Was gonna do this the dirty way. But what's the fun in that? I figured I'd have my back to do it. Keith then shifted his attention to the massive pit I was positioned at the edge of. It took me long to figure out what was intended to do with me, as whatever was kept down there was massive. I do apologize, boy. I really had to do this then again. It's just been since. He then pushed me into the pit. As I fell down, I was able to get a hold of one of the sharp rocks on the walls of the pit. As I maintained a tight grip while doing so, I pulled ropes binding my hands against some rocks to get it off. As I was doing it, though, this knocked some smaller rocks into the pool. Don't bother, Josh. You ain't living this place. Keith commented as I struggled. I ignored Keith as I continued to get my hands freed. As I was almost there, I looked down and noticed the water beginning to ripple. Out of the water rose two eyes with a jagged toothed snout below. I was able to finally get my hands free as I tightened my grip on the wall. When I looked down, there it was. As I recognized the creature. It's a giant prehistoric crocodilian, Dinosuchus. How Keith was able to resurrect massive animals such as that and Diplodocus, simple fossil remains, was beyond me. But I was more concerned with the escape of my life. Despite my feet being tied up, it wasn't as tight as it was with my hands, and I started to climb up. I managed to loosen it more and more, and was able to climb up more efficiently. Massive croc bellowed at the bottom of the pit, waiting for me to lose my grip and fall down into his hungry jaws. I started to climb faster. I was 2 feet away from the top of the pit. When I put my right hand on the edge, Keith was there with his foot raised. Y'all just don't know when to quit. His foot came down, but before he could knock me off, I grabbed the ledge with my left hand and moved my right and used it to grab Keith's leg. I gripped it so hard that it sent Keith forward, falling down into the pit past me. When I finally got out of the pit, I heard a splash. I turned to see the croc with Keith in its jaws, violently thrashing him around. And it then submerged with Keith. The last thing I saw were bubbles floating to the surface of the water. Afterwards, I decided to make a break for it. I ran as fast as I could through the floor, first past the avian section, then the aquarium section, past all the bizarre-looking marine animals I saw. Finally, there was the elevator door. I bolted to it past the terrariums and called for the elevator. As soon as I was back to the first floor, I took a minute to get a hold of myself, as well as the job, one of the manager being dead and all. As I walked to the front of the store, I noticed it was a nightmare. It seemed I was down there longer than I thought. I noticed I walked out of the store and went home. A week later, I decided to relocate once more to find another job. Once again, going through the trouble of moving my reptiles and everything else. However, I still wonder what became of everything I saw. Those things supposedly extinct animals that Keith was raising from the dead. Keith may be gone, but he mentioned several things about having contacts with certain people. I still wondered just who those people are, as well as their reasons for purchasing those animals. What if anything do those people plan to do with those animals, and why? Regardless, the thought of it alone is quite unsettling when I think about it. Another thought I've been having is, how did Keith get that technology? Who did he get it from? Whoever made that tech? How? To this day, I'm still not certain, but I have a feeling that one day the truth of it all will be revealed, for better or for worse.